Okay, let's dive right into a really provocative thesis about modern religious proselytization. Today, we're unpacking a fascinating explainer that presents a highly critical look at how Abrahamic religions, specifically Christianity and Islam, recruit new followers. Now, to be clear right off the bat, we're just here to neutrally unpack this source material. We're not taking sides. We are simply mapping out exactly how this argument views the mechanics of religious conversion. To really grasp this perspective, I want you to imagine a scenario. Picture walking into a store and being handed the ultimate, all-inclusive, brand-new smartphone. I mean, unlimited everything. And the salesperson looks at you and says, it's completely free, it's already paid for by someone else. All you gotta do is give a simple, verbal yes to take it home. Most of us would be absolutely thrilled, right? We'd snatch up that phone without a second thought. But what if we didn't read the terms and conditions first? And that brings us directly to the core thesis. The argument suggests that religious representatives, pastors, evangelists, imams, function exactly like deceptive salespeople. They sell the shiny, immediate benefits of faith while actively hiding the extreme, lifelong terms and conditions. The source claims that these leaders know exactly how heavy the burdens in their religious texts are, but they purposely keep them under wraps until the convert is already locked in. Section 1. The blind contract metaphor. Let's look at how this source builds the core analogy of our explainer. This brilliantly illustrates the bait and switch the speaker is talking about. On one hand, you have the pitch. It's presented as a beautifully wrapped gift promising eternal life, forgiveness, and a welcoming community. But on the other hand, you have the catch. The argument is that you're actually stepping into a legally binding, inescapable agreement, a heavy chain filled with severe theological penalties. It's the ultimate contrast between the slick marketing at the front door and the harsh reality once you're actually inside the building. Section 2. Christianity's sales pitch. Let's apply this metaphor directly to the first major example. So, the source outlines a very specific psychological teardown used in modern evangelism. You might have actually experienced this yourself. An evangelist walks up and asks, "Have you ever told a lie?" You say, "Yes." "Well, then you're a liar." "Have you ever taken something that wasn't yours?" "Yes." "Then you're a thief." "Have you ever looked at someone with lust?" "Yes." "Then you're an adulterer in your heart." The analysis points out that this is a highly calculated tactic. It's designed to convince you that you are a flawed, filthy sinner who is entirely unworthy of that free iPhone we talked about earlier. So, the absolutely crucial point here is how this psychological setup leads to the close. Once they've broken down your self-esteem and convinced you that you deserve punishment, they offer this incredibly simple escape hatch. Just say a short prayer. Just get baptized. Just give a simple verbal yes. At that exact moment, the religious representative makes it sound incredibly easy, completely skipping over what the actual text requires of a believer from that day forward. Section 3. The cost of discipleship. What actually happens when you finally open the terms and conditions of this Christian contract? The source dives into the actual text to make this point. Take a listen to Luke 14:26. "If any man come to me and hate not his father and mother and wife and children and brethren and sisters, yea, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple." This completely contradicts the family-friendly, supplementary lifestyle the modern convert thought they were signing up for. The evangelist pitched a religion that brings families together, but the literal fine print demands something entirely different. According to the source, the fine print of the Christian text demands absolute submission, suffering, and a willingness to sever your absolute closest familial ties if necessary. The explainer uses a pretty great anecdote here. Think about a mother who is just seeking a nice moral community to raise her kids in. If she knew up front that the foundational text might eventually require her to turn against her own family, she would hand that iPhone right back over the counter. She'd never sign the contract in the first place. And here's the kicker. Returning the phone isn't an option. Once you agree verbally, the argument continues. You are locked in. Verses like Matthew 10:33 are presented to show that the penalty for trying to break the contract, for denying the faith once you've entered it, is eternal damnation. You're trapped by a verbal agreement you didn't even fully understand. Section 4. Islam's easy entry. Now, the analysis shifts to how this exact same dynamic plays out in Islam. To get the Islamic version of the iPhone, the presentation points out that all you need is the Shahada. It's a very simple, verbal declaration of faith, stating belief in one God and Muhammad as his final messenger. During Islamic proselytizing, or dawah, recruiters really emphasize just how effortless it is to join. The promise is undeniably alluring. Recite the Shahada, and not only are your past sins wiped away, but they're literally turned into rewards. It sounds like a fantastic deal. But the reality, according to the source, is that the very second those words leave your mouth, you are instantly chained to the strict legal pillars of the religion. The entry is made to look incredibly easy, which completely undersells the heavy, lifelong obligations that immediately follow. Section 5. The apostasy fine print. What happens if you decide you no longer want to be part of the Islamic contract after you've learned all the rules? Well, this brings us to the concept of apostasy, which is abandoning or renouncing your faith. A massive contradiction is highlighted here in the modern sales pitch of Islam. While recruiters might proudly emphasize the Quranic verse stating there is no compulsion in religion, this presentation argues that this rule only really applies to getting you in the door. Once you are inside, the historical and textual punishments for leaving are incredibly severe. The argument brings up specific citations to back this up, like a hadith from Sahih al-Bukhari stating the blood of a Muslim cannot be shed except in 3 cases, one of them being the one who reverts from Islam and leaves the Muslims. Under strict interpretations of these texts, the penalty for a convert trying to return the phone, meaning to revert from Islam, can quite literally cost them their life. This represents the ultimate catch-22 of the thesis. Believers are trapped. They entered freely, totally wooed by promises of peace and community, but now face harsh chastisements, social exile, or potentially much worse if they ever attempt to exit. It's essentially a blood-in, blood-out commitment that was never fully disclosed at the front door. Section 6, the trap of cognitive dissonance. Because, the obvious question is, if people realize they've been tricked into a harsh contract, why don't they just leave? The source argues that basic human psychology is what keeps them locked in. By the time a believer actually discovers the harsh realities in their text, their entire life is already built around the community. They are deeply invested. They're afraid of eternal punishment or even real-world harm. So to cope, they rationalize. They are forced to make excuses for extreme scriptures, essentially deluding themselves because the cost of leaving has become simply too high. Section 7, the demand for disclosure. So where does the argument ultimately land on all of this? Interestingly enough, the speaker uses the religious texts themselves to prove that modern proselytization is getting it wrong. Take Luke 14:28, which asks, who would build a tower without first sitting down and counting the cost? Ironically, the source texts explicitly demand that a person sit down and count the cost before committing. You are supposed to weigh the heavy burdens. Yet the assertion here is that modern religious salespeople skip this step entirely, simply because they know it would ruin the sale. So the crucial takeaway here is this. By hiding the terms and conditions, religious leaders are actively robbing people of their fundamental human right to informed consent. Failing to provide full disclosure creates a false, generic faith. It builds congregations filled with people who are there out of manipulation and psychological entrapment, rather than a genuine, authentic commitment to the actual rules of the text. Which brings us to our final point, and the ultimate question raised by this source material. Should religions be required to provide full disclosure of their absolute worst terms and conditions before accepting a new convert? I mean, if a cell phone company is legally required to do it, shouldn't a faith claiming your eternal soul have to do exactly the same? It leaves us with a fascinating, highly provocative thought to ponder the very next time someone knocks on your door offering a free ticket to eternity.